Circuit Court is reconvened. Be seated, maintain order.
All right, Ms. Jensen, we're back on State of Florida versus Ashley McArthur, case 17 CF 5844. Defendant is present with counsel. Assistant State Attorney is present. Ms. Jensen, anything?
No, Judge, Mr. Brossett and I were talking on the break, and I feel like we've sped things up, which surely should make you happy. But regardless of what time we get done this afternoon, neither the state nor the defense are going to be prepared to close. I've got things that I need to do in a PowerPoint, so just letting the court know.
Well, I'm letting you know, I don't know.
Well, let me also say this. I got up at 3 o'clock this morning to go down to the office to work on things, and I got a PowerPoint that I'm still working on because I don't know what all evidence is in until the end. So,
Right.
you know, when we're going to call witnesses at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm just saying that, you know, we're doing everything we can to get that case tried quickly.
At least we're not going into Saturday now.
I am saying nothing and committing to nothing at this point, but I hear what you're saying out loud.
Let me also say that she's going to call Richey next.
Yes.
And I want to renew my objection. If I can do that, preserve it before she testifies. Basically, my objection was that she's not prepared to testify about anything further than the bullet was not suitable. As she said, no identification value whatsoever.
I'm not sure it even has to be renewed because you made the objection in the trial itself, but...
Well, they say contemporaneously.
Okay.
And the other thing I want to object to is she's tested a firearm, which we believe is a picture of a firearm that they've introduced of a .38. We submit there's been no connection to that firearm at all.
Okay, Mr. Brossett, if you renew it, just renew it,
No,
because I already heard...
This is a separate objection as to the fact that there's been no connection to the .38 picture to the death of Taylor Wright.
And yesterday I asked you if you had anything else to argue, and you said no. So I'm ruling that that testimony will be allowed, and everything is noted for the record. Okay?
Yes.
And I'm saying nothing about our schedule at this point. But I am asking, you're obviously handling Ms. Richey.
Yes.
And who's handling Wayne Wright?
Your Honor, I am, but I don't anticipate there's going to be much based on what Mrs. Jensen told me. Maybe no questions.
Okay. And then who's handling Dr. Minyard?
I am.
Okay. All right. If we're all ready, we'll bring the jury in. Let me just make a fashion statement here. No shorts in the courtroom. Capri pants fall in that questionable area. So in the future, tomorrow, don't wear anything other than pants, skirt, dress. Okay? Thank you. Okay, are the people who need, oh, it's that one spot that's really cold. But how's everybody else? I mean, I feel like I'm getting mixed. Yeah, well, I've got somebody wearing like practically a sweatshirt back on the Superman end of the coin. So we've got mixed reviews. Hopefully with the blanket, I probably can stir up another. I meant to bring, you know, my supply of dog blankets for y'all today, but I had a feeling you might not like the smell of, you know, the Great Dane. But anyway, I'm trying to keep an eye on you guys, and we apparently have kind of mixed temperatures even in the jury box inexplicably. So thank you for your patience with that. Ms. Jensen, call your next witness.
Elizabeth Richey.
All right, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
All right, have a seat. Pull on up to the microphone. I think you're pretty close. State your name and spell your last name, please.
My name is Elizabeth Richey, Richey.
All right, you may inquire.
Ms. Richey, where are you employed?
I work for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in Tallahassee.
And how long have you been employed with FDLE?
I've been employed with FDLE since 2007. I've been in Firearms since 2009, and I was promoted to an analyst position in Firearms in 2012.
Okay. And what are your duties with FDLE?
As a crime laboratory analyst with FDLE, my primary duties are to examine fired components, so things like shot shells, cartridge cases, and bullets, and compare them to questioned firearms to see if they have been fired from a specific firearm.
What education and training do you have to hold your position?
To be hired as an analyst, you first have to have at least a bachelor's of science in some sort of laboratory science degree. I have a marine science degree, a bachelor's of science in marine science from Jacksonville University. And then when I was promoted to the analyst position, I went through FDLE's 18-month training program. The first 12 months is spent primarily in book work and practical exercises and examinations. It covers the history and development of firearms, tool marks, firearms identification, as well as a few other courses like serial number restoration, distance determination. And once the first 12 months was completed, I went through the second part, which was 6 months of supervised casework. During that time, I worked actual cases under the direct supervision of a qualified analyst, and then once the 18 months was completed, I was allowed to begin working my own cases.
As a firearms analyst, approximately how many examinations have you conducted?
Thousands.
Have you testified as an expert before in your field?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
Approximately 50.
Were you asked to examine a bullet, in this case from the, purported to be from the skull of Taylor Wright?
Yes, I was.
And what is a bullet?
A bullet is the projectile that comes out of a cartridge. Most people, when they say bullet, they're thinking of a cartridge or a single unit of ammunition. Now, a cartridge is a complete unit of ammunition. It contains the cartridge case, the primer in the cartridge case, the gunpowder, and the bullet or the projectile. When I say bullet, I'm talking about the projectile, the unit that goes down the barrel of the firearm and is designed to hit a target.
And what type of exam were you able to perform on that projectile?
When I receive just a bullet in a case, I will examine the bullet, record its class characteristics. And class characteristics are the characteristics that are determined by the manufacturer prior to manufacturing a firearm. So when they're going to create a firearm, they decide what caliber firearm are they going to manufacture. They're going to decide how many grooves in the rifling of this firearm it will have. Will this rifling go left or will it go right? How wide will those grooves be inside that barrel? So those are all class characteristics. When a bullet is fired out of a firearm, that bullet expands to fill the rifling. So as it's moving down the barrel, it's picking up the rifling impressions of this firearm. So I can examine a bullet, I count the number of grooves it has, I can measure the lands and grooves of this firearm, I can measure the diameter of the bullet, and taking all of those things, I can then put the characteristics into what's called the General Rifling Characteristics database. And I can come up with a list of potential firearms that may have fired this particular bullet.
And what can you tell us about this particular bullet?
This particular bullet is 38 caliber class, and caliber class is a family of calibers. So 38 caliber class means that the bullet has an approximate diameter of about 0.356 inches. There's a number of calibers that have bullets of the same diameter, and the most common calibers within the 38 caliber class would be 38 Special, 357 Magnum, 380 Auto, and 9mm Luger. So the bullet is a 38 caliber class bullet, and it displayed rifling characteristics similar to Harrington and Richardson, Iver Johnson, Lama, Ruger, Smith & Wesson, and Taurus, and there were some others that were on the list. This bullet had 5 grooves rifling, and it had a right twist.
Now, was it, would you be able to do any sort of identification with that?
This particular bullet, was of no value for identification, meaning that any marks that may have been present at the moment of firing were not able to be seen by me.
Now, did you recently, and when I say recently, I mean within the past few weeks, did you receive a Smith & Wesson revolver?
Yes,
with- I'm sorry, with serial number 5D as in dog 86787?
Yes, I did.
And did you test fire that Smith & Wesson?
I did.
And did it fire appropriately?
Yes, it was functioning properly.
Is it possible that the bullet from Taylor Wright's skull was fired from that .38?
Yes.
You can answer.
It is possible, based on the class characteristics of the bullet compared to the class characteristics of the firearm.
Okay. Now, your report says that the bullet displays discernible class characteristics to the revolver. What does that mean in lay people's terms?
The bullet that I received, I was able to measure the diameter to come up with caliber class. I was able to count the numbers of lands and grooves and which direction the twist of the rifling went. I was not able to measure the lands and grooves because it either was too damaged or the shoulders, which is the transition zone from land to groove, the shoulders were too weak to measure. And so when I did my examination, I was looking at the tests that I made from the firearm and then comparing the lands and grooves on the unknown bullet, and they were pretty close. So the discernible characteristics are the same from the gun to the bullet.
Did the condition of the bullet prevent further identification?
Yes.
What was the condition of that particular bullet?
This bullet appeared to have been corroded. It looked heavily encrusted with something. It had been torn. It had been fired.
Thank you, ma'am. Those are all my questions.
All right, Mr. Barry Barosset's going to ask you questions, and if it's just yes or no, please answer yes or no. Don't elaborate, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Richey. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Ms. Richey, first of all, you did take a photograph of that, did you not?
I did take a picture of the bullet, yes.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'd like to show you what's been marked as State Exhibit number 11 for identification.
Okay, is it defense 11?
Yes, defense 11.
Okay. I didn't think you had switched sides on me, Mr.
No.
Barosset.
You switch words. Thank you.
Okay, uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that a photograph that you're familiar with?
Yes.
How are you familiar with it?
This looks like a copy of one of my pages from my notes.
Okay. You provide, in fact, your office provided me with your work product and notes, correct?
It appears to be, yes.
So
I'm
that's-
not part of that.
That's a photograph that you took?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, and that is a photograph of what we talk about, the bullet that you examined.
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to offer defense exhibit number 11 into evidence.
No objection.
Received as defense 11.
Would you hold that up to the jury and let them see that? Actually, could she walk forward and just go down? It's hard to see.
And just a reminder, as I told you before, everybody's going to have all the exhibits in the back.
If you would, just walk slowly down in front of them, let them take,
No,
On the
let's
in-
not in the
yeah.
jury box, just,
yeah.
yeah, outside the box. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may return to your witness chair.
As I understand it, that bullet is quite badly damaged and corroded, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And in fact, when you made your report, I believe your first report on August the 2nd, 2019, you indicated that that one fired bullet, let's see here, was test fired, right? Excuse me, wrong. Let me go back here again. Let's go back to November 28th, 2017. November the 28th, 2017.
Yes, sir.
C1 on your report is the bullet that you just showed a picture of to the jury. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And based upon your examination, your microscopic examination measurements of that bullet, what did you say? What were the results of that examination?
Based on the measurements, the bullet is .38 caliber class, and it displays rifling characteristics of 5 Wright.
Okay. But what'd you say as far as identification value?
It is of no identification value.
So when you say of no identification value, you cannot tell which firearm it was fired from, can you?
That's correct.
Now, I believe, and I'll refer you to your report of August the 2nd, 2019. At that time, did you have a list of the various class of firearms that could have fired that?
When I did my initial examination, I came up with a list of potential firearms.
And that list, how many pages was it?
It was 6 pages.
And that list, did that include all the firearms and makes that could have fired that projectile?
The database,
Yes or no?
did it include it? I don't know. The database is not all-inclusive, so I don't know what is not in the database. So I
Okay.
don't know what may have been left out.
Okay. Okay. As far as you know, did it include firearms that you believe could have fired that projectile?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? I'd like to show you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 12 for identification.
I have no objection, Judge.
Okay.
We'd offer that into evidence along with the other, Your Honor.
All right, it's received as defense 12.
Is that the list?
Yes, sir.
Would you tell the jury how many firearms of that class are on that list approximately?
Without counting, I don't know. I don't know how many approximately are on each page.
Okay. How many different models or makes?
I'd say probably at least 50.
50 different models?
I would say probably at least 50 models,
And-
manufacturers.
And there's more firearms within each model, correct?
There's many different firearms within each model, yes.
So the answer basically to the question, there is an innumerable number of firearms that could have fired that bullet.
With the same class characteristics, yes.
And is it true that based upon your examination, you cannot tell whether or not the specific firearm that you tested fired that bullet?
That is correct.
Your Honor, I think that's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berryville.
Ms. Richey, in your initial report or in your most recent report, you never said that firearm fired that bullet, did you?
No, I did not.
You just said it's consistent with.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can you hand me up the exhibits that you have there? Is she completely free?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Barry Barossa, is she?
Yes, we'll release it from our...
All right, you're free to go, just don't discuss your testimony, okay? Thank you. Call your next witness.
Wayne Wright.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
All right, have a seat. Pull up to the microphone. State your name and spell your last name, please.
Wayne Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T.
He's been sworn in and has spelled his name, and you may inquire.
Sorry about that. You should have in front of you states 5 and 6, 90, 91, and 152 through 154.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
Where are you employed, Mr. Wright?
The Office of State Attorney.
And what do you do?
I'm an investigator.
Where were you employed before the state attorney's office?
The Escambia County Sheriff's Office.
And what about prior to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office?
Immediately prior, I was in the private sector unrelated to law enforcement. My only other law enforcement experience is as an auxiliary constable with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Is the what?
An auxiliary constable with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Okay. Did you request some firearm traces in state of Florida versus Ashley McArthur?
Yes.
Okay, and then if you look at states 5 and 6, and then 90 and 91, 5 and 6 show some Glocks, and then 90 and 91 show a Kimber. Were you able to get traces on those 3 firearms?
I was able to get traces on 2 of the 3.
Okay, which 2 of the 3?
The Glock 42, which is a .380 caliber, and the Kimber, shown in States Exhibit 90 with the gun box, the serial number on the side of that gun box.
Okay, and why couldn't you do the other Glock?
As you can see in States Exhibit 5, that particular Glock is in a holster, and there's a shadow that partially obscures the serial number of that gun.
Judge, without objection, the state moves to evidence states 155 and 156.
Okay, is there a 157 out there somewhere too?
Yes.
Okay.
Not
Then-
there yet.
All right, I will admit 155 and 156.
Which firearm is the trace in Exhibit 155?
155 is the Glock 42 .380 caliber.
And which firearms trace is in States Exhibit 156?
156 is for the Kimber SIS Ultra. It's a .45 caliber.
And who did those guns trace back to?
They both trace back to Taylor Wright.
Okay. Did you recently interview a Brandon Beatty?
Yes, ma'am.
And was Mr. Beatty able to facilitate tracking down a .38 Smith & Wesson?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the revolver in states 152 and 154? Or 152 through 154?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. And did you request a firearm trace for that revolver?
I did.
Judge, without objection, the state will move in evidence states 157.
It'll be received as 157.
Who does that .38 Smith & Wesson trace back to?
It traces back to John Ratliff Britt.
And is the serial number on that 5D as in dog 86787?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Those are my questions. Thank you, sir.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, is he completely released?
Yes, ma'am.
I need you to leave the exhibits if they're up there. I assume you're completely released, so don't discuss your testimony.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
All right, let me see counsel at the bench with the court reporter for a second. All right, Ms. Jensen. Call
Dr.
your next-
Minyard?
Dr. Minyard. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
All right, have a seat. Pulling up to the microphone, state your name and spell your last name, please.
Dr. Andrea Minyard, Minyard.
All right, you may inquire.
Dr. Minyard, what is your occupation?
I'm the interim chief medical examiner for District 1 in Florida.
And how long have you been the chief medical examiner for District 1?
I was appointed chief in 2004.
Okay, and what about prior to that?
I was an associate here for a couple of years, and then prior to that, I worked as a deputy coroner in Dayton, Ohio, and prior to that, medical examiner in District 5 in Florida, and also District 14, which is Panama City and Leesburg.
How long have you been a medical doctor?
Since graduating from medical school in 1992.
What is your specialty?
My specialty is forensic pathology.
And what is that?
It's where a pathologist studies the cause and manner of death in people who die under a certain set of societal guidelines, rules. In our case, it's our Florida statutes, and we study deaths due to homicides, accidents, suicides, or any other type of violent or unnatural death.
What is your educational background?
Well, I went to medical school after graduating from college. After medical school, I did a residency in pathology, which was a 5-year program at that time. I then did a fellowship 1-year study strictly in forensic pathology. I'm board certified by the American Board of Pathology in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology, and I have a license to practice medicine in the state of Florida.
As part of your duties as a medical examiner, do you perform autopsies?
I do.
And approximately how many have you performed in your years?
I've performed thousands of autopsies, and here in District 1, our average has gone up probably to above 350 just for me by myself.
Have you testified as an expert before?
Yes,
Approximately how many times?
hundreds of times.
Can you describe for the jurors just the basic autopsy procedure?
When a death is discovered, one of my investigators is notified, and at that time the determination is made whether or not it falls under the medical examiner jurisdiction, because not every death does. Once that determination is made, then the investigator or I will visit the scene, and then the body gets transported to our office, which is currently housed in Sacred Heart Hospital. The next business day is when the autopsy will occur, and we start with photographs of the external surfaces as the body is received, clothing, medical therapy, everything still intact. And then we take all the medical therapy off and all the clothing off and clean the skin and take, again, photographs and documentation of the body. I'm specifically looking for traumatic injuries, but I'll also note medical illnesses or diseases that are affecting the health of the individual. And that includes an internal examination to be able to discover a lot of that.
Did you perform an autopsy on Taylor Wright?
I did.
On what day?
I performed the autopsy on October 20th, 2017.
What was the condition of Ms. Wright's body when you received her?
She was partially skeletonized.
What was she wearing?
She had, still around her bones, she had shirt, shorts, panties, and a bra.
No shoes?
No shoes.
And what type of jewelry did she have on, if anything?
She had on a necklace, which had a pendant.
How were you able to identify her as Taylor Wright?
We can look at dental radiographs, which are x-rays of the teeth and the fillings in the teeth and the way the roots sit into the mandibular and maxillary tooth ridges, and we can compare ante-mortem, meaning before death when she's gone to the dentist and gotten x-rays, and post-mortem x-rays when she's in our office. And if they match up, then it's a very good way to identify a person who's otherwise unidentifiable.
And what was the age of Taylor Wright?
Her age is 33 years.
Were photos taken during the course of Ms. Wright's autopsy?
Yes, they were.
And would they help illustrate or assist your testimony for the jury today?
Yes, they will.
Would they help explain the type of injuries and the condition of her body as you saw her?
I believe so.
Judge, I've already shown the photographs to Mr. Barry Brossett, and without objection from the defense, the state would move in 141 through 150.
All right, it's received as states 141 to 150.
Yes.
Judge, may I publish?
Amen.
Dr. Minyard, this is State's Exhibit number 141. If you could just describe for the jurors what this shows.
Yes, this shows the pictures of how she appeared when she came into the office. This is the first set of pictures, so this is including clothing and any other soil or debris that is actually attached or adherent to the body. Here you can see that her skull was already detached from her body. Here's the necklace that I described with the pendant. We have some various bones, her jawbone here, some vertebrae here. You can see the humerus, which is the arm bone here, and you can see the fact that she still has her clothing on.
This is State's Exhibit 142.
Now this is after we've removed the clothing and just laid it out on a white sheet of paper.
State's 143.
And same with the shorts.
This is State's 144.
This is a hair mat, and this occurs because the scalp, in its decompositional process, the hair will become separated from the scalp before the scalp disappears from decomp. So this is a hair mat that's left behind because the hair doesn't go away, it just sits there and it gets all tangled up and mixed up with dirt and bugs and things.
This is State's Exhibit 145. Some jewelry that was...
Oh, right, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I didn't recognize it.
This is State's Exhibit 146.
All right, so here we have her skull with her top teeth and her bottom mandible or the jawbone is lying over here. This is an entrance gunshot wound to the skull. The reason I know that is because it's perfectly round, well, almost perfectly round, and it's got inwardly beveled defects, which means it's not just a straight 90-degree angle here to the hole, it's actually inwardly beveled, which means it has a little bit of an angle on the edge, on the inner edge. This is a defect in the skull which could represent simply a skull fracture that blew out or a skull fracture that got eaten or taken away by predators after death. But this is actually where the bullet tried to exit. So you can see it entered here and tried to exit here. You see this little flap of skull fractures here in the form of, almost in the form of a circle. I called it a dome.
This is State's 147.
And here it is again, you can see, you can even get a sense of the fact that this is outward beveling, whereas the other one was inward beveling. And again, this is what's considered a partial exit. So the bullet, as it enters, has enough force to enter the skull and go through the brain, but it doesn't have enough force to actually exit the skull. And this is fairly common.
This is State's 148.
This is simply a picture of the left side of the skull. And you can see here that there's a fracture line. These lines here are normal suture lines that everyone has because as babies, our skulls are soft and pliable with overriding sutures so that we can get out of our mother's vaginal canals. But once we grow up, these fuse.
This is State's 149.
Here we've taken an x-ray of the skull and we can see the lead projectile showing up on the x-ray.
This is State's 150.
And this is the same lead projectile that we saw on x-ray.
What was the direction of the gunshot wound?
It went from her back to her front. It also went upwards and very slightly from her right to her left side.
And is the condition of Ms. Wright's body consistent with her last known alive date of September 8th, 2017?
Yes, a body that is exposed to the elements, especially water. Water does real damage to our flesh. I've seen a person almost completely skeletonized in just 10 days. So this is consistent with the last known alive.
What is your opinion as to the cause of death?
The cause of death is gunshot wound of head.
And what about the manner of death?
The manner of death falls under a category of homicide.
Now, when you're talking about water, you're not suggesting that Ms. Wright was in water, correct?
Correct. It's rain. Rain and groundwater.
Those are my questions. Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Barry Barosset's going to ask you questions. If it's just yes or no, answer yes or no, please. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. 146. Yes. Thank you. May it please the court. Good morning, Dr. Minyard. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you, Mr. Brossett?
Fine. I want to ask you a few questions, and I'm looking here at this photograph, which was identified, I believe, as 146, State Exhibit 146. To the left in the bottom of the screen, that round hole you described as a bullet entry wound, correct?
That's correct. I think
Okay.
you're referring to this hole.
Yeah. Now, up to the right, that larger sort of moon-shaped hole,
Yes.
you're not saying that that was caused by an external force, are you?
No,
Okay. In other words, you're not saying that somebody was struck over the head or anything like that.
that's correct. I'm not saying that.
It was something that maybe fell out or through decay or whatever?
It could be through decay, through the force of the bullet entering the skull. We will have fractures, and that could have been a small fracture that got dislodged.
The other question I have is, what's the definition of homicide that you use when you say something is a homicide?
Medical examiner term is death at the hands of another.
Because it's ruled out as a suicide, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, in this particular case, you had mentioned that the body was you conducted an autopsy on October the 20th, 2017?
Yes, sir.
And when was the body brought to the morgue or the pathology office?
The West Florida Removal Service, the intake sheet is dated October 20th, 2017.
And I understand the remains were found, I think, on October the 19th, 2017.
Yes, yes, sir.
Ms. Jensen asked you, is the skeletal remains consistent with a death occurring on September the 8th? And what I'm asking you is, are you saying that the death of this person occurred on September the 8th?
No, sir.
What I understood you to say is that you've seen conditions of total skeletization within 10 days, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so it would be hard to pinpoint exactly when this death occurred, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And also, one follow-up question. We've seen a few of the pictures that they've showed, but you've took many pictures in this case, didn't you? 47?
Yes, sir.
I mean, you're very thorough about examining everything.
Yes, sir.
And you preserve any items that you received, do you not?
I'm not sure what that means.
You preserve any items such as the necklace that was taken, that's turned over to law enforcement, is it not?
Yes, it is.
In other words, anything that you see of an evidentiary value for testing, for DNA or anything like that, that would be turned over to law enforcement.
Correct.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's it.
You're welcome.
All right, Ms. Jensen.
Go read your hat.
Is Dr. Minyard completely released?
Yes, ma'am.
You're completely released. Take care. Ms. Jensen.
On the state rest.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have some things we need to talk about outside your presence. If you'll leave your notepads, blankets, pencils, and we'll be back with you as soon as we can, okay? Don't discuss the case. All right, everyone can have a seat. Does the defense have a motion?
Yes, we do, Your Honor. We would move for a judgment of acquittal. They have to show three things. Number one, that Taylor Wright is dead. There's no question about that. Number two, that it was caused by Ashley McArthur. And number three, that it was premeditated. We submit that the evidence is totally circumstantial. In this case, it doesn't exclude every reasonable hypothesis of innocence. They failed to show that there was any premeditation. They also failed to show that Ms. McArthur caused or killed Taylor Wright. We would also renew our motions that we made prior to trial, including the motions to suppress and the motions in limine, and renew our motions for mistrial.
Thank you, Mr. Barry Barossett. Ms. Jensen?
Judge, I think the evidence speaks for itself. The state's proven a prima facie case of first-degree premeditated murder.
All right, Mr. Barry Barossett, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to deny the motion for a judgment of acquittal. Is your, I'm assuming you still plan to call
Witnesses, yes.
witnesses?
Yes.
Do you want to check and see if your
I can check to see
chiropractor?
if he's out there. I did call him, so I told him to try to be here. May I be excused?
Sure.
You want him in here now?
No.
Okay.
I mean, if he's there, we can just wait a second. We'll bring the jury in and take it from there.
He brought his own record, so he has some others that you might want to look at. No? Okay.
Sure you can. We're good.
Yes, we are.
Okay, let's bring the jury in.
We'll let her see some exhibits, just in case.
Okay.
Questions.
Some new documents.
Okay. I mean, if you're ready, if you're not ready, we can wait.
Can I have?
Can you just tell Tisha to hold up?
Right here.
Up. You're right where you're supposed to be for once. Okay. All right, y'all may have a seat. For the record, defendant is present with counsel. Assistant State Attorney is present. Mr. Barry Barossett, the state has rested.
Your Honor, we would like to call Dr. Tom Roberts.
All right. Can I get you to stand and be sworn, please?
Stand.
Yes, sir. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
All right, have a seat. Pull up to the microphone and you can kind of swing it more towards you. We've had people looking at the screen. State your name and spell your last name, please.
Okay. My name is Dr. Tom Roberts, Roberts.
You may inquire.
Thank you. Dr. Roberts, would you give us your educational background, your experience, if you would, to the jury?
Sure. I went to Texas Chiropractic College in Houston, Texas. I have went to San Jacinto College in Houston and Pensacola Junior College here. I have been certified to do manipulation under anesthesia. I've been credentialed at Cornerstone Surgicare, Surge Center, Pinellas, in Key Largo, or Largo, Florida. Again, certified to do manipulation under anesthesia. Certificate of completion for Department of Transportation. Certificate of completion for rating and permanent impairment using the AMA's Guide to the Evaluation of Permanent Impairment, 6th edition now. Also completed 3 modules of the Whiplash and Brain Injury Traumatology program at the Spine Research in San Diego. I am was licensed in Florida in 1985 as a chiropractic physician, and been practicing in Pensacola for 34 years.
Did you have occasion to, in your practice, have contact with Ashley Britt Nix?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see her in the courtroom?
Yes.
When was your contact with her and under what circumstances, if you could tell us?
She was involved in a motor vehicle accident that I treated her for. The accident was on 2/9/2010. I started treatment of her February 10th, 2010.
And you brought with her your medical records, is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you take us through your initial conference with her and evaluation?
Okay. So I'm going to read, if you'll allow me, because honestly, it's been a long time, and that's all I have is to read my notes that...
I don't want you to read them word for word, but you can refresh your recollection as to the entry.
Okay. All right. Okay, so she was involved in a motor vehicle accident on 2/9. She sustained injuries to her neck and lower back. She had injuries with symptoms of pain radiating to her neck, mid-back, low back, also to her right shoulder and to her right hip. She complained at the time of loss of memory. She struck her head at the time, she states that she has headaches with dizziness and loss of memory. She states she has been restricted in her daily life and daily activities and her household chores. I examined her that day.
Do you also give them x-rays when you examine them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you do that in this case?
I did.
Okay.
I examined her and I did a physical, we do a case history, a history of the events, then enter past medical history, then we do a physical exam, which is what I do. And so I examined this patient with, and I noted muscle spasms and rigidity in the muscles surrounding her neck, mid-back, and low back. I had some positive orthopedic tests.
I couldn't hear you.
Positive orthopedic tests, and then we did x-rays, static as well as kinetic x-rays, so we had her in motion.
You're going to sort of have to tell me maybe what's the difference between a static and the different x-rays?
All right, so static would be just a patient standing still, and then we put them in range of motion, have them bend, flex, and extend their neck in this case, and try to see if there's any ligament instability with doing these x-rays like that. We did note that she's hypermobile in the flexion and extension x-rays, which means that there's more motion in the spine because the ligaments are loose because of the injury. She had a whiplash type injury to her neck as well. Then it goes on to say that I'm going to treat this patient, and I did for a period of approximately 90 days until she reaches maximum medical improvement. And again, this is just an estimate treatment plan. I went on to treat the patient with manipulation, chiropractic manipulations, and physical therapy.
No surgery, right? You don't do surgery?
Correct.
Okay.
We did chiropractic manipulations and physical therapy, active as well as passive physical therapy. Active is where the patient takes part, try to rehabilitate the structures of her spine. Passive, she just lays down, and we have modalities attached to her to treat her for her injuries. We did this type of treatment for about 10 months.
Okay. When you said originally you saw her for 90 days,
well, that was an estimate of what I normally do, see a person for 90 days. For closely scheduled appointments, and then they should be at maximum medical improvement within 90 days for conservative care, which is what I am, conservative care. Then you need to either send the patient out to a specialist, surgery or pain management. Can't treat them forever. So that's just an estimate of time that we should have this patient as good as we can get them and then send them somewhere, or they're well, So that's what that is.
What was your evaluation of her injury? And is there a way to demonstrate that to the jury?
Yes, well, she showed signs of a disc herniation in her neck as well as lower back, and possibly a torn shoulder. So we did MRIs of all three of those areas, and I have those MRIs. To summarize.
And the MRIs, I don't think everybody's gone through an MRI, but what is an MRI?
Well, an MRI is an exam. It's an imaging exam, kind of like an X-ray, so if you don't use any X-rays, it uses a magnet. And what is best about an MRI compared to an X-ray is an MRI shows soft tissue like a disc or ligament, as X-rays don't. They just show bone. That you can see the space that a disc occupies, and you can tell something about the disc by a plain film X-ray. But MRIs are better because it shows the disc and it shows the ligaments.
And were these MRIs consistent with your evaluation?
Yes. In the cervical spine, it showed more degenerative arthritis from something previous, which she had apparently aggravated with this accident. Her shoulder just showed some swelling, some inflammation and swelling. Well, you can't see inflammation, but swelling, which is inflammation, showing that she had an injury to the shoulder, but no tear. That's what you're looking for in an MRI. The lumbar spine, we noted, or this person, this is MRIs are read by a board-certified radiologist. This person, doctor's name is Scott Thorpe, and he stated that in his report that she had a disc herniation at L4, L5. There's 5 lumbar vertebrae, and the discs are in between the vertebrae. So L4, L5 is the second to the last disc in your lower back. So L4, L5, there is a central disc herniation. I'm just going to read this. The disc herniation more focal in the midline that appears extruded with slight downward displacement of the disc material, best appreciated on this image, blah, blah.
Well, don't do blah, blah. We got to
Okay.
order.
I'm
Either
sorry.
say it or don't say it.
Well, it says best appreciated on sagittal image number 6. Okay?
And I know that, like you said, this has been 2010, 2011.
Right.
So I understand that you take good notes, and that's what you're relying on, all right?
That is correct.
How many people do you treat a year?
A lot. Yeah, I probably have 10,000 in my database.
Okay.
So yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. That's why I have to read everything, because I don't remember back that far, just offhand.
Okay. As a result of that, how long did you treat her?
Treated her for the 10 months, and then there's a gap, and then I had her come back in for a final evaluation, which was on 8/8/2011.
2011?
Mm-hmm.
August 2011?
Yep, yes, sir.
Okay.
So we did a final evaluation at that point, and I have the, that evaluation as well.
Let me ask you this. Will you be able to demonstrate the injury that you had with the exhibit you have there?
I can.
Can you explain that to the jury? Show them the injury?
Yeah.
Wait, I'm asking you first if you're able to do it.
Yes, I can.
May I allow him to approach the jury box so that he can demonstrate to them?
And my understanding is it's not really an exhibit, it's a demonstrative
It's a
aid.
demonstrative evidence.
And that's more for the record, so there's.
Correct, yes.
Right. You can step down. Just keep your voice up so that the court reporter can hear you.
Okay.
All right. Wait till you're.
Yeah, wait till you get down here. You may have to walk along when you show it, okay?
Okay. All right, so this is the vertebrae, and this is another vertebrae, and this is the disc in between.
Now, would you show each of them that as just such a, I mean, I know it's good.
So there's two parts to a disc.
Could you stand here in the middle? I'm sorry, so that they all can see at one time. Yes, just so.
And keep
all
your
right.
voice up.
Okay. There's two parts to a disc. There's the annular fibers, which is the outside part. Then there's the nuclear fibers, which are the inside part. So when you have a disc herniation, she had an extrusion at L4, L5, but she had a disc herniation protrusion at L5S1. And I'm going to explain the difference. The disc herniation protrusion is this disc material here, the inner disc material, has herniated into the annular material till about right there, protruding the annular material out. That's why it's interchangeable disc herniation protrusion, because you can herniate into here, but it protrudes here. So you can use those two words interchangeable, and they do in the report, they put in parentheses protrusion, herniation protrusion. Okay, that's at L4, L5S1, which is the very last disc. At L4, L5, which is the second to the last disc, you have a disc herniation extrusion. The disc material has extruded. So what they're saying is this disc material extruded beyond the annular fibers and is actually out here in the epidural space, which is where the spinal cord is. That makes sense.
Thank you. Take your seat, please. Dr. Roberts, because of the extrusion, was that a more serious injury than,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes, sir.
why is that?
Well, disc protrusions, herniations don't have fragments or disc material extruded into the epidural or the foramen space, a neuroforamen space. So if you have an extrusion, hers was downward. Normally they're posterolateral, which is to the back, to the side, which is where the nerve is that goes down your leg. And it's almost always a person has to have surgery when you have that, because it's a fragment. I can adjust them, you can treat them all you want. But if you have a foreign body in a hole where the nerve is, it's going to irritate that nerve. She did not, clarify, did not have that. She had an extrusion that was downward into the epidural space.
Okay. And I know you can only talk as to that time period, not to the present, but
Correct.
what kind of problems does that cause you, that type of injury, at that time?
Yeah, she had, and at the end of treatment, in that final exam, we asked them, do you have trouble doing certain things, or activities of daily living? Do you have any problems doing those? We give her a questionnaire. We ask the question, we write it down, they answer the question. It's not something we physically, find out from a palpation. They tell us. So she had some, at that time, she had some problems working inside the home. She had pain. Do you want me to go through this? It rates from 0 to 10. Do you want me to go through?
If you can just
the
sort of
numbers?
give us an opinion about it,
okay.
that's just as good.
Okay, so I'll just tell you what she was having trouble with. She was having trouble traveling, sitting or standing, lift overhead, lifting objects off the floor, bend, squat. She had difficulty walk or run. She's asked if her income declined, and she said no. Are you taking pain medication? Yes. Do you see more doctors now than before? Yes. Interference with your ability to see the people that are important to you, and yes. Interfere with recreational activities? Yes. family, friends, interaction, yes. Do you feel depressed, tense, anxious, yes. Emotional problems caused by your pain that interfere with your family, social, or work, yes.
Okay, let me just ask you this. Without any further treatment, do you expect improvement on that?
Without further treatment at that time,
Yeah.
do I think that she would improve? It would be limited improvement without treatment.
Okay. And that's all the questions I have.
All right, now, Ms. Jensen's going to ask you questions. If they're just yes or no, answer yes or no.
Okay,
Don't expound on them.
all right.
All right?
Dr. Roberts, you saw,
I forgot something. Could I redo something on direct? Just a second.
We'll count it as direct,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Barossett. Ms. Jensen, just stand by.
I didn't want to introduce all the records, but I wanted to show them these records.
I have no objection to their introduction.
All right, thank you.
Are these some of the records? And this is Defense Exhibit number, right there on the front,
Number 10?
number 10.
Mm-hmm.
Are those some of the records that as to your treatment of her over a period of time?
Yes.
She would come in for manipulations and,
Yes, sir.
okay. I'd offer those together.
All right, they're received without objection, defense 10. Thank you. Now, Ms. Jensen, back to you.
Thank you. Dr. Roberts, you saw Ms. McArthur 5 times in February of 2010, correct? I have the 10th, the 12th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 24th.
Correct.
You saw her 6 times in March 2010, which is the 1st, the 3rd, the 8th, the 17th, the 19th, and the 26th.
Yes, ma'am.
You saw her 6 times in April, which is going to be the 5th, the 7th, the 9th, the 12th, the 19th, and the 28th. Correct?
Correct.
You saw her 3 times in May, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th.
Correct.
You saw her twice in June, the 11th and the 21st. Correct?
Yes, correct.
You saw her 1 time in July 2010, that was on the 6th.
Correct.
You saw her once in August, which was on the 11th.
Correct.
You didn't see her at all in September 2010.
Correct.
You saw her 1 time in October 2010 on the 1st, right?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
You didn't see her in November 2010 at all, right?
Correct.
And then you saw her 1 time in December of 2010 on the 1st.
Correct.
Okay. And then you did a final evaluation of her August 8th of 2011.
Correct.
Okay. Had you seen her from that last date on December 1st, 2010 to August 8th of 2011?
No.
Okay. And this final evaluation you spoke about, your report is based on her self-reporting.
Correct.
Okay. And that letter that you showed me today was something for her lawyer for an insurance claim, correct?
Correct. Not, I do have a letter that I sent to the attorney, but that one that I showed you wasn't that letter.
Okay.
That's
Did
just a part of the record that shows.
Sir, short answer.
Okay.
Did the final evaluation go to her lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. So the car accident was in 2010, correct?
Correct.
We're now in 2019. So can you tell the jurors in the past 9 years how Ms. McArthur's physical activities have been limited?
No, not at all.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts.
No further questions.
All right, is he,
Released.
he's completely released? You're completely released?
Okay,
Just
thank
leave
you.
the exhibit up there. There's,
Okay.
leave that there.
Just leave
Or
it
you can
there.
hand it to me if you want to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I have a second possum story I've been saving all week. Your food is on the way up. I'm going to tell you the story. You don't look that excited. One morning I went out this couple of years or so ago, and I was looking out the screen enclosure, and it was early, and I saw something moving and something moving on whatever was moving. And I'm not the great with distance, so I wasn't sure what it was, but since there was a screen between me and whatever it was, I was very brave and went out there. I don't live in Gulf Breeze with all the bears, so I wasn't worried about a bear. And I got out there and realized that it was a mother possum with 6 possums all over her, and they were moving around. So possum story number 2. I don't think I have a third one. Y'all know what the drill is. You're going to leave your pencils and pads. We've got lunch for you. If you decide that you want some fresh air, we're going to have time for fresh air. You just let them know that. How are we on the snacks in the back? Are we okay? Good? Okay, they're checking on you. All right, y'all are giving me that slightly, I'm not sure what look, but I hope that once you eat something at lunch, at 1 o'clock, you'll be a bigger smile. How about that? Maybe you're just long week. All right, don't discuss the case. I'll see y'all at 1 o'clock. Thank you. All right, Ms. Jensen, anything else before the break? Mr. Barossett, I assume, Barry Barossett will have all your other witnesses here at 1. Ms. Jensen, I know you don't know exactly who you might call in rebuttal, but...
Well, the Barossetts have been kind enough to give me the gist of what their witnesses will say, so we'll have them here.
Yeah, if you'll have them, because I think potentially none of those other witnesses may take, and then I'll give you time after you've called all the non-defendant witness to talk to your client and make that final decision. Okay? How about 1 o'clock in the courtroom? All right, thank you.